of the San Francisco Interfaith Council, I want to welcome you to this third in a series of online briefings for faith leaders. Aging adults who are 65 or older are more likely to have serious coronavirus illness. This may be because immune systems change with age, making it harder to fight disease and infection. Older adults are also more likely to have underlying health conditions that make it harder to cope with and recover from illness. In addition, aging adults who live in a nursing home or long-term care facility are at even higher risk. Loneliness and anxiety, commonly experienced by those in this sector, only compound the complexity of suffering in this vulnerable population. Today's online briefing for faith leaders, hosted by the San Francisco Interfaith Council in collaboration with the San Francisco Departments of Public Health and Emergency Management, will address the impact of the COVID-19 on aging adults, as well as state and city programs being offered to provide relief. As we do in this series, it is my personal privilege and pleasure to introduce the chairman of the board of the San Francisco Interfaith Council, Kaushik Roy.
Thank you, Michael, and good morning, everyone. Like Michael said, my name is Kaushik, and it's my great privilege to be the chair of the Interfaith Council Board, and I want to welcome you all on their behalf. This is the third of the series, as Michael mentioned, and I am particularly interested in this morning's topic, and we have two incredible guests that Michael will be introducing in a moment. So I hope all of you find this as interesting and engaging, as I think you will, and I am. For those of you who have been with us before, you know that at the beginning of each event that the Interfaith Council hosts, we do want to read our Interfaith Council Interfaith Statement as a way to be present for each other and ground ourselves. So I will do that now before the program continues. This is an interfaith community. Whatever our individual belief, it can be freely expressed here with no apologies. If we are invited to offer a prayer in this setting, it should be offered according to the tradition with which we identify. If we are invited to speak on a subject from the perspective of our tradition, we are free to do so without fear of offending those who come from another tradition. We come together as people of faith to learn from each other that we might better understand the multiplicity of faith traditions in our city and in our world. Good morning, everybody.
Thank you, Kaushik. And with that, on this first day of Ramadan, I would like to invite San Francisco Interfaith Council board member, friend and colleague from the Pacifica Institute, Fatih Ates, to ground us in a reflective moment.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. Salam, shalom, shanti, peace and blessings upon all of us. What a holy month of April we are having this year. Easter, Passover Seder, and tonight we are entering the holy month of Ramadan. Thanks be to God. So during this entire holy month of Ramadan, healthy adult Muslims fast from the break of dawn to the setting of the sun. During the daylight hours, strict restraints are placed on Muslims' daily lives. Muslims totally abstain from food, drink, and intimate actions in the daylight hours. Ramadan is a time of intensive worship and devotion to God, a time to read the Quran, which is revelation started in this holy month of Ramadan, and inner reflection, a time of comprehensive thanksgiving and giving in charity, sadaqah, a time of self-control and kindness, a time of training oneself to be a good, faithful, and moral person. During fasting, not only are Muslims obligated to restrain the stomach, but also the tongue, eyes, ears, other limbs, other inner faculties and spiritual faculties, and the heart and the mind. So I invite all of my brothers and sisters to join their Muslim neighbors' devotion to this holy month of Ramadan. And being in active, being in prayers in words and sincerity, and also being prayers in action. Please join me in my prayer. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the infinitely compassionate, the infinitely merciful. Praise be to you, creator of all worlds. You alone do we worship, and from you alone do we seek help. We believe in you, O Lord. We put our trust on you, O Lord. We thank for your endless sustenance. O Lord, purify our hearts, remove envy, greed, and hatred from our hearts. Shine into our hearts and fill our hearts with your love, with your compassion, with your faith, and fulfill our hearts with understanding for one another, respect for one another, and the love for one another. O Allah, save us, protect us from all sorts of troubles, all kinds of discomforts, illness, and evils, especially from corona outbreak that we are currently exposed to. I also want to remember and pray for who directly affected the illness and the corona, and I also remember and pray for those who lost their loved ones. Pray be to you, creator of the all worlds. Amen.
Thank you, Fatih, very much for grounding us. It is my distinct privilege and pleasure and honor to welcome into the room Kim McCoy-Wade, who is the California Department of Aging Director, who at the very outset of the pandemic reached out to the San Francisco Interfaith Council and sought to engage us in the programs and in the work that is being done at the state level. We also welcome Shireen McSpadden, the Executive Director of the San Francisco Department of Disability and Aging Services. The San Francisco Interfaith Council is working directly with Shireen on a number of programs to engage aging adults here and people with disabilities in San Francisco. And I had the distinct privilege of working with her as a commissioner on the Department of Aging and Adult Services Commission. So we welcome you both. Kim, would you start us off, give us sort of a landscape of what's happening at the state level and some of the programs that we in San Francisco can take advantage of, especially in this time of the coronavirus.
Thank you, Michael. And I will. I'm so honored to be here. I am humbled to be going before Shireen McSpadden, who has really lit the path for what we need to do with and for our older and adult community. And I'm following in her footsteps. I'm only willing to go ahead of her because I know she'll correct and amplify everything that I miss. So thank you for including us both. All of what we are doing is in partnership with local leadership in government and outside of government, with families more than ever. We are all in this together, and I'm so grateful for this space to come together in this way. I will give a really quick update. Obviously, this is an incredibly tough time, an incredibly fluid time. So I'll share where we are, where we were, where we are now, and where we're going, which is constantly moving and constantly in dialogue with the data and the science and with listening to these conversations like this. So where we started really was just, right with the big public health information push. And of course, starting on March 15th with the stay-at-home order for older adults, even before the Bay Area stay-at-home order. Older adults really have been the first to stay home, the first to bend the curve, the heroes of this, really. The call to service that older adults have answered in bending the curve needs to be acknowledged. And so the information had to get out. We really do want to continue to reinforce the public health, your local public health department and state public health department. And to that end, the governor created the website of covid19.ca.gov is just an accurate one-stop shop for information. I know San Francisco Department of Public Health has done the same. We also around the state wanted to resource our 211 network. to make sure that every community could always start with 211 if you have a question about housing or food. I know in San Francisco, 311 is the lead partner for you all, and that's terrific. The point is that there be a door for everyone to start, even if you don't know all of our acronyms and all of our roles, you know a door to walk through. So with that COVID-19 website and phone number and the 211 network, we're hoping people can continue to get informed. But of course, right after information, we wanted to make sure people were staying home and staying safe and staying healthy. And we really focused on a few core needs. Four. One is food. And I don't need to tell all of you that, how everything is changing with food, all of the meals to older adults, not just the traditional delivery, but the community meals. Tomorrow, we hope to be announcing a new partnership with FEMA, a first in the nation partnership where we can, our local counties and cities can sign up restaurants to serve even more older adults and at-risk adults at home. So we're really looking forward to be able to announce that tomorrow and kick that off tomorrow and get restaurants into the mix. And many of you have already done that, but even more with the FEMA support and pilot that for the nation. Health has been huge, helping everybody get telehealth and prescriptions. So many older adults rely on many medications and making sure they have that mail access, the delivery access, and our health plans have been great partners in reaching out, making calls. We've also been really pushing connection. The congregations are huge places for that. The governor repeatedly calls all of us to make those 5 calls, not just your friends and family, but the neighbor, maybe the person you never called before, to reach out. And I'm thrilled that we're expanding our work in this area. I'll talk about it a little more in a second with San Francisco's own Friendship Line, a treasure that we're able to expand statewide in this moment to Friendship Line California, so that everyone can benefit from that connection 24/7, whether feeling isolated while you're isolating, which happens to all of us, or all the way into a full-blown crisis. And then also safety. We are worried about more and more older adults who were living independently because of a range of community supports that have now had to reinvent. And so really expanding our adult protective services, letting people know that if you do want to call a wellness check for a neighbor who you're concerned about, we now put a 1-800 number. We're looking at promoting adult protective services. It's not as well known as maybe the child welfare system, but it is a very important part of our wraparound in this moment. So food, health, connections, and safety have been where we've been focused. I would say pretty quickly two issues really emerged to the forefront that we've been really rushing to embrace and be more proactive on. One, of course, is the racial inequities and the evidence of discrimination, cumulative long-standing discrimination, and what we're seeing in the African-American community in particular, and then early data also from Hawaiian and Pacific Islander data, the disparate impact there. And so that having that data released, thank you to San Francisco, is one of the first counties that did that, and the state doing that more and more. So to drive action, both in the immediate, but also, again, work to be done in terms of closing gaps on health access, health equity, and all the determinants of health that are so cumulative for older adults. And then the other area, again, I don't need to tell San Francisco and the Bay Area, the residential facilities, what's happening in places where older adults and at-risk adults live together. Laguna Honda is the largest SNF in the state, is obviously a skilled nursing facility, is obviously a focus of attention, but all community facilities, including where people who don't have homes are gathered to live, and people who are currently incarcerated. All of these community settings need to be and are being rethought with local leadership and state leadership. And I think that the one thing that started to happen in the last few days and weeks is all the surge capacity that was built for hospitals. We are very, 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 very fortunate that in the moment it's not being needed. And so the questions, the conversation, the dialogue about what to do with that surge capacity, perhaps for skilled nursing facilities or other populations, positive facilities or negative facilities, I think is really where a lot of the work is happening right now. Maybe Shireen can give an update on that, where San Francisco is thinking, but how do we use all of our community resources for all of our people is really the heart of the discussion. I think just the last thing I'll say is the go forward. You'll hear from the governor, you've heard it from your mayors, that there's a roadmap here. There's a roadmap to, we don't even say going forward into a new world. And the metaphor that our governor keeps using is this dimmer of how are we going to slowly turn things back on. And I think what's important for our community is to know that services and congregating of older adults will probably be at the end of that line, given the risk, the high risk. And so what that means is older adults were both the first to stay at home and probably the last to come back to a communal, in-person, I should say, in-person life. And so what that means for all of us, I think about all the older adults I know who their calendar may have been filled for the month of May with worship and volunteering and seeing their grandchildren and their exercise class. And most of that is not going to happen in May. Or if it happens, it has to happen differently. So we are really calling on all of our partners. Congregations have been leading the way with online services, but libraries, parks and recs, area agencies on aging, all of our community life needs to be reinvented. And so some of the things that we're doing in that space, we have tried to provide more support to friends and families to stay connected when you're in distance, even if you're in distance in town, right? You're in town, but you can't be together in the same way. We've started a series of conference calls. We call them check-in calls. Last week was about friends and family supporting family at home. And yesterday was about friends and family supporting family at a distance, whether that's across town in a residence or across the country. Next week is going to be about essential conversations with family and friends, planning, serious illness. I just saw a resource on tribal leaders and funeral preparations in the age of COVID, really having some of those hard family conversations for these serious illness moments. And then the next one will be about self-care for all of us. We will be in this for a while. Another area we're really looking at is the digital divide. Again, San Francisco has been a leader. I think we can all get that staying at home with internet is different than staying at home without. And it is profound in terms of engagement. This right here, a video chat and chat with family and friends and content is also very important for telehealth. It can also be very important for online grocery delivery. You may know CalFresh will be online in a week statewide. It's happening in Sacramento right now. And of course, other pay services are already online. So we have work to do on broadband access, device access. There's all these wonderful new accessible voice activated devices and training. And again, to that end, today we're having our first webinar on digital divide this afternoon, helping people help people in their lives get online and do more online. And with the AAAs that Shireen's part of, the area agencies on aging, not the towing company, we're looking for a much more bold proposal about how do we bring more older adults through more decades online in more ways, all the way across the state. And then last thing I'll say we're looking ahead to, and again, I got inspired by San Francisco's work on Never Gets Old. We have a lot to do to, in this moment, the good news is that older adults have been the focus of a lot of attention. The challenging part is a lot of it's been about risk and vulnerability and protection. And we want to also make sure that people remember that older adults have autonomy and purpose and authorship of their lives and are in fact heroes and part of the response to this. So we are fortunate that May is Older Americans Month, and the theme this year is Make Your Mark, and we can think of no better theme for all the older adults who are making their mark right now. So we are looking to collect videos from older adults and disabled adults and adults who are at risk, who are staying at home, who are running congregations online, who are homeschooling, who are possibly healthcare workers or grocery workers, all the ways that we know older adults are making their mark. And we want to tell that story too, as this generation's call to services to stay home, and they are answering the call, and that needs to be honored and recognized. So hoping that you'll hear more from us about Make Your Mark in coming days as we really do lift up this community and plan for the long haul. Shireen, the last thing I'll say, of course, is the conversation we just began about reimagining the future. This is a moment to rethink how we do services and supports, and really how we do community, across generation and across ability. And we would be remiss if all we did was run to get back to where we were. And so creating those tables and that space to think differently, even amidst the rush and pressure of the moment, is really upon us. So I look forward to more forums to be that thoughtful, and call on you all to be the prophetic voices you have always been to help us envision a new world together. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And I just want to let you know that the information and the resource links that you have sent us, we have shared with our constituents, and they have found them invaluable. Our congregation leaders have utilized them. So please continue to send them, and we will make sure they get into the right hands.
Thank you.
Okay. Shireen?
Okay, well, Kim is always a hard act to follow. Kim, thank you so much for all that you said, and I think I'll echo a lot of what you're saying, but just at the local level. And I also want to say that CDA, California Department of Aging, and Kim have been a fantastic partner with the AAA network, and particularly, I think, with San Francisco. And it's been a real joy to work with you, Kim, through this, even though it's not a great situation that we're in right now. I'm really, really proud of what we've been able to do in San Francisco, not just at our department, but as a network of organizations serving older people and as a faith network. I think it's been amazing how everybody has come together to really say, how do we support the systems that we have, and how do we expand them and build upon them, and what else do we need to do? One of the things that I think has come out of this is that I have found that our systems are indeed very, very strong. And so many of you on this Zoom call are part of that. And, you know, I think we've seen on one hand that we have a lot of gaps, and we know that we need to fill those gaps, and we know that we don't have enough dollars, and that, you know, older adults are often, you know, left out of conversations about funding and things like that. On the other hand, our systems are just really strong. And a couple of examples. I mean, one is in terms of our nutrition response in San Francisco. Kim said earlier that food is such a huge thing. And 99% of the calls we're getting at our helpline at our department are for food and for people who are needing those resources. And we were and are able to rely on a very strong system of support. So things like home delivered meals, we're able to ramp up, home delivered groceries. The senior centers really pivoted very quickly from being these vibrant centers where people are there every day doing activities to places where people could either take out meals that were pre-prepared, or somebody could come and deliver them to people. And it's just that quick, the nimbleness of our nonprofit network has really been clear to me. One of the things that we've also enjoyed is a great partnership with, and kind of new partnerships or expanded partnerships with organizations like Shanti and the Institute on Aging. So with Shanti, I reached out to Kaushik, I don't know, Kaushik, what, like 4 weeks? I don't know how long ago it was. It might have been yesterday, it might have been a year ago. But I reached out to Kaushik and said, would you be able to take on being our partner for volunteer coordination? Because we know that our systems are actually going to need support, and we know that we're going to get overrun with requests for meals and other things that are related, like medicines and things. And he thought about it and got right back to me and said, yes, we'll be that organization. And it's just been fantastic. I mean, my staff, who are the ones working mostly with Kaushik's team, have just said that Shanti has been fantastic to work with. And so I'm pleased to say that they've matched many volunteers with many people in need in San Francisco, and it's really helped take the burden off some of our other programs. So that's one thing that's happening. And there's just a really robust network of volunteers matched with people who need things. Not only are they shopping for and delivering really important resources, food, et cetera, but also they're creating a personal connection to the people that they're working with, because they're talking on the phone, they're finding out that people have a lot of emotional anxiety and needs, and that they're lonely. And so they're working with them on some of those issues, and just being able to provide, a friendly ear and to listen and talk to people. So that's just a really important connection on many levels. I think, Institute on Aging, when somebody, I think earlier, was saying that what must have been Kim, was saying that we are thinking about long-term care facilities. Institute on Aging has worked with us, with DOS, to really think about transitioning people out of places like Laguna Honda into hotels, so that we can thin out Laguna Honda in the places where we need to. We've done the same thing with people needing to move out of San Francisco General Hospital, and I know that Episcopal Community Services has been really instrumental in a lot of that work as well. And these are systems that we had in place before this happened, and so Institute on Aging has been a long-term partner. Episcopal has too, and we were able to rely on those systems to kind of move in and really help make transitions as smooth as possible in this situation. I think the other thing is that our own staff in the department have really stepped up too. And in-home supportive services, we have a model in San Francisco where we have contract mode, so that allows us to really use IHSS in a different way, in-home supportive services and home care. And we have been able to provide home care in hotel settings. And again, this is a model that we've used for a few years in SROs, and we were able to transfer that into hotels so that we're able to provide home care for people who need it in the hotel system that we have going right now. And that's really exciting to see these models scale up and work really well and provide safety for people. I think I want to say too, our adult protective services staff, our in-home supportive services staff have really stepped up, and they're concerned about going into people's homes. They're concerned about infecting their clients. They're concerned about their own families, and yet they're continuing to do their work. One of the things that we've seen in adult protective services is not necessarily an uptick in abuse calls, but we have seen an uptick in restraining orders. And of course, when people are with their families and not able to go out, things tend to happen. I mean, I've heard from my own staff that, everybody who has kids at home and parents at home, it's pretty challenging to be in the same house all the time. And so we have seen an uptick in that, and our teams have been really responsive to meeting the needs of families who are in crisis. So I think that there are a lot of things going on. Sorry, there are people walking behind me, but they will be passed in a minute. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we've been able to really rely on that, and yet we know that we still have a lot of need, and that after we have so many new people coming into our system that we're going to really have to figure out how we meet those needs after, not after, but as we start to transition into a different phase. And, Beth mentioned earlier before we got on this call that, one of the questions is, how do we think about continuing to serve people in the way that they need to be served? We can't just take people out of hotels and put them back, especially older adults, put them back on the street. We can't necessarily have them in the congregate settings that we had them in before, say in shelters. We can't just take people who are now relying on our food resources and say, okay, you're cut off. I mean, I guess we can, but it's not a humane thing to do, and we're going to be in this for a long time, and so we're going to need to figure out how to extend our systems out. I think we've had, one of the things I've also been impressed about is that we've gotten so many offers of resources, and we've seen a lot of new kind of exciting things pop up. For instance, people who are able to really pop up new systems with food supply, everything from food supply to delivery, so the whole chain. And I've been talking to some of those folks in San Francisco about how they're going to continue those things out. They have a lot of really goodwill. They have a lot of donors. They have a lot of money right now. But can we really extend those things out for at least a few years, so that or at least a year, so that we have time to transition people back into something different? And so I think there's going to be a lot of work around that. The other thing that we really have focused on is thinking about people at home alone and how we engage with them. And so I know Kim and is thinking about this at the state level and wondering what, kind of systems we can stand up statewide. And I'm really excited that Friendship Line has a contract with the state to provide their services statewide, because that Friendship Line is a wonderful service. We're also thinking about whether in San Francisco, whether we can layer some services on top of that. Are people going to need things that are they going to need something more clinical, for instance? When would that be a helpful intervention for older adults? We're also thinking about the things that we can do online. Our senior centers have really stepped up in terms of building online content, and some of it is so cool. I mean, they're doing happy hours, they're doing Zoom, Zumba, they're doing, just a variety of brain fitness classes, they're doing art, they're doing choirs. I mean, it's pretty amazing what they've built. And yet we also know that a number of older adults in San Francisco are not connected. I mean, when you think about our population, and just for those of you who don't know, our population of older adults and people with disabilities is a quarter of our total population. And half of that population lives at 300% or less, 300% of poverty or less. So people do not have a lot of resources. 42% of our total population in San Francisco of people 60 and older are Asian Pacific Islander, and many of them are monolingual Chinese speakers. And so we have to really think about the diversity here and the needs, the different needs that people have. We are always thinking about providing services in an equitable manner. And I think, as Kim mentioned earlier, that we know that that the virus is affecting communities of color differently from the way it's affecting the overall population. So there's a lot of complexity to how we have to think about our programming and our approach, and and yet we know it's really important. One of the things that's happening down here at the EOC, where I'm working right now at the Emergency Operations Center, is we really are thinking in every conversation we're having. I'm running the feeding unit, so I'm responsible with my team for thinking about all aspects of feeding for all populations that are in need during this crisis. And we always are looking at this with an equity lens. Are we providing food to people are we thinking about the communities most in need? Are we thinking about people's food choices and just every aspect of it, and trying really to meet those needs? And so we need to continue that conversation broadly as we move forward into whatever next phase, as we undim the dimmer, we need to be thinking about all of those things at once. And I think I will stop right there.
I want to thank you, Shireen, for taking time out of your service there, and thank you for your service at the EOC. I also was remiss in not fully disclosing that you are the daughter of a United Methodist pastor, so you have a special connection with the faith community, and you are also a member of the board at Glide. And it was Shireen who reached out to the Interfaith Council a couple of years ago, wanted to make sure that faith leaders had access to city services, and that began an amazing relationship with the department. And I want to give you every assurance that we will creatively continue that relationship, and what you've done has been invaluable for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Before I introduce our panel, I did want to just offer a commendation to our faith leaders out there. Houses of worship have always been hubs where aging adults have felt safe, valued, and they've been able to escape social isolationism. With this new normal now, the role of faith leaders throughout San Francisco could not be more important. And I just want to say a very special thank you to them, because I know that they are diligently checking in on their older adults and making sure that their spiritual needs as well as other needs are being met. We are very blessed to have with us today 3 panelists each of whom serves as well on the Faith-Based Social Service Agency's CEO Roundtable, which we've convened since 2008. Allow me to introduce them one at a time. The first is Tom Briotti, who is the president and CEO of the Institute on Aging. The IOA has its roots in Zion Hospital and the Jewish community. I know, Tom, that we're neighbors in the Presidio because your new dementia center is right around the corner from the Interfaith Center and the chapel. It's great to have you with us, and I know you're doing some important work with Kim. So would you kind of give us a very brief overview about how your agency has been impacted, staff, clients, and then please pose a question to our panelists.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Kim and Shireen, for being here. Our internal mantra at the Institute on Aging is that we want to be part of the solution. And we know that the solution is not held by one organization or another. It is only through partnerships that we're able to support the older adults and those with disabilities in our community. And so we've had major pivots. So we have had about 300 people in our day centers, and obviously they're no longer there. And so we've had to regroup and begin to provide home care services to those 300 people. And that's created unbelievable challenges, whether it's food delivery and repositioning our staff members to be able to provide that care. One of the greatest challenges that we face is really emotional support for our staff members, who then provide emotional support to the thousands of people that we support in the community. And that's been a major challenge for us in recognizing all of the challenges that our staff members are going through in their home, whether it's caring for children or older adults in their family, and then taking the risk, putting themselves at risk and going out to serve this population that is extraordinarily vulnerable. And I am very proud of the 750 staff members within IOA that have stepped up and are finding new solutions. So like Shireen was talking about with the day centers or the senior centers, we've tried to begin to develop programming, remote programming, activity kits, and electronic connections with all those people in the community. And I think Kim mentioned earlier, yes, we're experiencing a new reality now, but there may be learnings that we're taking away from this experience that we'll keep with us, new ways of connecting with people that we'd never thought possible. For instance, we've been talking about Friendship Line, which is our telephone hotline for older adults and those with disabilities who are facing loneliness and social isolation. Well, our call center was a physical place. And once the order came down to shelter in place, all of those individuals that staffed our call center all had to be dispersed back into the home. And so we had to redesign the technology and so on and so forth. And we were able to do that within the course of a week. And within that week, our call volume from lonely, isolated older adults jumped by 35%. So we're now at about 900 calls a day. And this is before the announcement of the new California partnership. And of those calls, 70% of those individuals are first-time callers. So that is telling us that there's this growing population as older adults are now forced to stay in, that they're suffering. They're suffering loneliness that leads to the depression and other mental health challenges. And so we've had to ramp up our staff. We have about 8 full-time people that we've added to the Friendship Line staff to be able to address that. And it's so exciting for the Institute to be in partnership with the state of California and the city and county of San Francisco in being part of that solution. And we like that challenge. And this has been a 40-year commitment for the Institute to deal with the challenges of older adults and those with disabilities. So this is right in our wheelhouse. And we're very privileged to be a part of that solution.
Question?
A question, I guess, looking at Kim, it's more about, I want to recognize the great work that you've been doing at the state, Kim, and of all the, over these last several weeks and all the huge challenges that you faced, what are you most proud of that California has been able to do that we can point to?
We're having trouble hearing you, Kim. Okay, sorry.
I have you muted so you don't hear all the exciting family chatter in the background here. But I would say thank you for the kind words. What I was saying is I think there's two sides to that question. What I'm most proud of is California's approach to, you mentioned partnership, we mentioned equity, you know, first in nation. We are not shy, we are bold. And I think this requires bold. But I will say, those of you, I met many of you when I took this job to lead the master plan for aging process, which was an explicit acknowledgement that our aging systems and services and community were not as strong as they needed to be. And that we needed to do, and this may be news to you in San Francisco because you have one of the best in the whole country, but as a state, CDA needs a reinvigoration. We need a new vision of aging being everybody's issue, and we need a stronger partnership around the state. And we need the resources in terms of whether it's child welfare compared to adult welfare. We need to be investing in all families at all ages, 8 and 80. So I don't want to shy away from the fact that this has both shown the strengths of our partnerships and our systems, but it's also really shown the weaknesses. We talked about people without homes, the home care gaps as well, the burdens on family caregivers, which were already, you know, the extraordinary, are amplified. So I'm not sanguine about the fact that I'm proud of what we've done, but I'm also in a lot of pain and grief about the gaps. And I know we're all going to work very hard to overcome them. But, you know, what's happening in residential facilities is heartbreaking. What's happening in certain communities is, you know, just piling on top of isolation and food insecurity that was already there. So I think we are going to learn a lot. We are going to do better. I want us to be sure we don't have any regrets looking back for what we could have, should have, would have done. But it's hard to be leading from a position where we already knew we had gaps into this really catastrophic situation. So yes, I'm proud of what we're doing, and miracles happen every day, thankfully. But boy, do we have some mountains to climb still. So Shireen, I don't know if you have another longer, wiser perspective on what we've done and what we have still to do.
Nope, I would agree with what you said. We have a long road to climb. I think the one good thing in all of this is that the general public, at least I hear more people thinking about the needs of older adults and talking about them. And that to me is a good thing. I think there's also an opportunity to revamp some things that we needed to revamp. So not only are we seeing that we have gaps, but we also know that we needed to kind of modernize some things anyway. And so this is going to force us to do that probably a lot more quickly than we would have otherwise. Yeah,
Tom's story of changing your technology in a week is really, that's the kind of thing that's happening all the time. So there are bright spots like that.
Thank you both very much, and thank you, Tom. Jewish Family and Children's Services is an institution in San Francisco. I mean, the work that they have done is pretty remarkable, and they are also the home to the Rhoda Goldman Center, which is a resident care center. We are very, very privileged to have with us Nancy Masters, who is the Associate Executive Director. I've been in touch pretty regularly with the director, Anita Friedman. And Nancy, would you come on board and tell us what's going on over at JFCS, and then offer your question?
Yes, I'd be happy to, and thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I mean, clearly this time, you know, it's had a profound impact on our agency, on our clients, our workforce, on our community. And we've been focusing on taking measures to make sure we can stay strong during this pandemic. I mean, this isn't a sprint, this is a marathon, and organizations like ours need to be here for the long haul and need to remain strong to do that. Our mission really is to make sure we're supporting both our existing clients and the larger community that is turning to us for help, to keep our workforce supported and healthy, and to keep our agency strong. We're focused on frontline support to older adults. We're focused on helping people that have lost their jobs and closed their businesses, including many older adults who work in this community and who now are struggling with financial challenges, and also parents and grandparents that are caring for children and playing many different roles now during this time of teacher, of caregiver, of parent, of worker, all at the same time, and trying to juggle and balance those tremendous stresses. So we do serve individuals across the lifespan, but clearly one of our most concerns is the well-being of our older adults that are isolated at home, as we've been talking about. Social isolation is a profound health risk, and we don't know what the long-term impacts of this is going to be on older adults that are for a long period of time so isolated. JFCS does operate adult day healthcare program and also social day in other areas, and did have to quickly transition from bringing our clients together in groups to figuring out how to provide those services in clients' homes, which we are doing, making sure that everybody stays well supported, that they're getting their medications, that they're getting their food, that they're getting their nursing care in their homes. And I do want to say that our staff's been amazingly creative in trying to figure out new ways to serve people and making sure they stay connected. Food has been a huge issue, as we've been talking about, and we've seen a 10-fold increase in the number of people that are relying on JFCS for food. And we've had an outpouring of donations, but need more in terms of being able to bring food on a weekly basis to all of our community that is in need for that, and the larger community. And so we've really been relying on a volunteer outpouring in order to do that. We've been so blessed to have, even in the last few weeks, over 400 new volunteers contact our agency and begin to be involved with us. And volunteering in and of itself is a way to maintain social connection and mental health. I mean, people are really, as you all know, they're looking for a way to connect. They're looking for a way to give back, to find meaning in this time. And so being able to connect people for volunteering, to deliver groceries, but also safe at home calls. And so we're reaching out and making sure that all of the older adults that need that from our, are getting a daily reassurance call, and building relationships that we think will maintain beyond this and strengthen those relationships. I mentioned financial issues. JFCS is providing loans and grants to people in need, and that's very important now. Of course, it's not just seniors. Many people across the lifespan are experiencing profound economic challenges, but seniors too have lost businesses and lost jobs. So that's a very important piece of what we're doing. And I mentioned also parent support. We're doing a lot of support to grandparents, to parents, particularly single family parents, parents of children with special needs. Everybody is struggling, but certain groups are really struggling much more. So that is important. Our workforce is of tremendous importance. So keeping our workforce healthy. We haven't had to lay off staff. We have redeployed people into new positions. Our offices are open with a skeleton staff. Most are working from home, and many are working out in the field, including our home care workers. And we have been able to obtain PPE, but that has been sort of an ongoing struggle for the agency to make sure that we have sufficient supplies. So let me ask my question. So Sunday is National Superheroes Day, as you may know, and we consider our home care workers to be the true superheroes in this pandemic, because they are going out day after day into the homes, risking a great deal in order to care for the people who need their care most. So in light of that, and we mentioned a little bit about IHSS workers, there's so many concerns that we have about the health of the caregiver population and their being able to continue to provide these services. And I just wanted to find out more about protections that are available to IHSS workers or home care workers so that this vital caregiving force can continue to provide these needed services, both to seniors and also people with disabilities who are also dealing with a lot of challenges through this time.
Yeah, I do think that you know, in the beginning days of this, all the focus was on hospitals and medical care and surgical care and trauma care, and understandable. But there is now in the last few weeks some space created around the continuum, and looking at everything from the residential facilities to home care. And I think you saw that, I think about 10 days ago, it was explicitly said that not just healthcare, but also social workers, and I think home care, a combination of both, if we're candid, but are eligible for personal protective equipment through the county process, like expanding that beyond those, you know, clinical workers to home care. But I think we have a long way to go. I mean, we haven't yet expanded the notion of family caregivers, the unpaid caregivers also being a critical part of this. So I'm hopeful as we move from sprint to marathon, that broader view of what it means to stay home and stay healthy, and the community supports that actually, to everyone's on this call has said, are still there. They're just not congregate. And we have to be really mindful that we figure out the language and how we lift that up and make that visible both to the people who it's there for, but also policymakers and funders and decision makers about how do we talk about this system. Like Shireen knows, like, I think a lot of our language is tough for people, what long-term care is and IHSS, and I think we haven't yet kind of caught the imagination in the same way that our colleagues and allies in the children's. I think people are much clearer about what's happening with schools shifting to online than they are about our world, and what that means and what that needs and what's already happening that's awesome and what's needed to sustain that for the next 6, 12, 18 months and then reinvent it into the future. So there's an opportunity here, but we've got to get organized and get articulate and get together to really shift the dialogue on that. I'm hopeful, but there's more to do.
Shireen, I know that there's some real connective tissue between your department and in-home supportive services. Can you speak to that and answer Nancy's question as well?
Sure. And well, in-home supportive services is within our department, so it's very much embedded in the work that we do. And one of the things that we've done, Nancy, is you know, before the state released its protective equipment for IHSS workers, we've really been trying to do that here, and we unfortunately had to really triage that protective equipment because, as Kim said at the beginning, the conversation was really about how to get it to people in the healthcare system, you know, in hospitals, et cetera. And so, but we created a tiered wage system for IHSS workers so that we have the ability to pay our regular wage to people who are doing the regular work, but we built in a couple of other tiers and are paying more for people who are going into homes where people are COVID positive. And we have trained them and equipped them with the protective equipment that they need to keep the person they're serving, or, you know, the family safe if they're people who are not COVID positive, but also to keep themselves safe. And so that was a huge effort, and it actually took us a lot of wrangling to get the equipment to the staff and to go through the training and work with the Department of Public Health to get the right protocols in place and so that we can train adequately. I'm really pleased to say that we are doing that now. We've had our nurses involved in the conversations. We've had a variety of other people who've been willing to help us figure all of that out. But I agree with you. I think that home care workers are really superheroes in all of this. People are going, you know, one of the things we were really worried about is we worried that there would be a huge drop-off of workers. And the IHSS program alone serves 25,000 individuals annually. We have 22,000 workers. And so to have a big drop-off in that would be very scary. And so we had a contingency plan built in, which we may still have to go to at some point. But we have not seen a huge drop-off because people are really committed to providing the care, and they know how important it is, especially in this time.
Thank you, Shireen. Episcopal Community Services has a unique relationship with the San Francisco Interfaith Council. 31 years ago, Mayor Art Agnos called upon faith leaders in San Francisco to do their part in helping to respond to an emerging homeless crisis. And with that came the emergence of the Interfaith Winter Shelter. For 30 of those 31 years, the Episcopal Community Services has been the agency that has overseen this and worked in close collaboration with the Interfaith Council. One of the great privileges of my job has been to work with Executive Director Beth Stokes on a number of issues. One of the things that I have come to deeply respect about Beth is her sensitivity to the aging population, as well as making a priority at ECS of having specialization for especially homeless clients who are aging. Beth, the floor is yours. I just want to say a very special thank you to you for your work. I know ECS is one of the largest shelter providers in San Francisco, so you bring this unique lens and perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I don't think we have much time left, do we?
We do.
Okay.
We're fine.
Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. ECS, just to give some of the participants an understanding of our continuum of services, we do operate a considerable number of congregate settings for the unhoused in San Francisco. As of March, I would say 16th, the day before the shelter in place, we had over 700 unhoused folks in congregate settings. So on the 17th, certainly was a fire drill for all of us in the community with many lessons learned. And some of those lessons we were actually trying to learn prior to the COVID crisis. And I do want to, just say my deep appreciation to Shireen for her leadership and thought partnership as we at ECS were trying to work with Shireen and HSH to move to think of a different way to approach aging adults in congregate settings before COVID. And unfortunately, we were not able to operationalize those ideas and those thoughts before COVID, because we did have a plan. When this happened, and we also were actually, as a community, looking at how we were prioritizing housing, supportive housing, and how the aging adult population was, it seemingly at a disadvantage. They weren't being reflected in the numbers in terms of the percentage that they represent in the population. So there seemed to be some skewing in how we were assessing older adults that were highly vulnerable in the assessment tools that were being used. And so I know that there was conversations to address that early on. Unfortunately, that did not happen soon enough. I think there was in the community an awareness, and I think that with COVID, it does put a spotlight on issues that were identified early on, and even more so now. And I just want to again just say my deep appreciation to Shireen for standing by us and supporting some of those thoughts, and also bringing more of her ideas to the table. So thank you. I would say right now the challenge for ECS was over the past 6 weeks, is to move folks from the congregate setting, those 60 and older, and those with vulnerabilities, which really kind of goes to 45 and older, who are unhoused and have been unhoused for a long time, into the hotels. And so ECS is operating the 500-room hotel in the city. So we have, and that's from congregate settings all over the city. It's not just ECS's facilities. And so we've been working with Shireen and her team and IHSS very closely to figure out how to address social isolation, and for folks who normally were in a congregate setting and who are now in rooms by themselves and have to shelter in place. And so sheltering in place has been really difficult for those unhoused coming out of congregate settings. It's very difficult for the 300 that we still have in congregate settings, as we're really pushing for wall-to-wall testing in those facilities, as well as support for sheltering in place in congregate settings, because we do have policies in the city that still allow people to come and go out of those facilities. That has been one of our great challenges, is to get on the same page with our partners in housing and homeless services around, existing policies that have been in play. And we feel the need to recognize really what the intent of sheltering in place is when you operate a congregate setting and you still have folks living in those settings with a staff that is, doing their very best and showing up every day, and who are afraid. And I think that, for us, the challenge, to the staffing challenge, and one of the things we identified early on that I thought was, interesting was that when the governor on the 15th indicated, that folks 60 and above should shelter in place, we immediately sent out that communication to our employees that were of that age, and that it was not mandatory but voluntary, and many did volunteer. And the issue that we were faced with was that they were, running through their vacation and leave time in numbers that seemed to be a bit unfair. And so as we wanted them to stay home, our preference was that now we have this group of employees 60 and over, who have depleted a lot of their leave and who really do need that leave. So that's something that as an organization we're trying to address in the coming budget year. But it's just something I want to point out that, is occurring, for many of us in the field. And so, I think that I think the beautiful thing about, if there was anything about this situation, because it has been daunting, I think for all of us, has been just the new partnerships and the courage and the grit that I've experienced with my team and our partnerships in the city to really kind of try and figure out new ways to work with folks who are in hotel rooms, to try and really address social isolation, and to kind of extend our hand, knowing that we absolutely cannot be alone, moving forward. I think that for me, the big question I have is really kind of, as we early on with Shireen and her team thought through, or attempted to really think through with very few resources and really no resources, or just Shireen did put up some resources that we weren't able to leverage. How do we rethink? How are we going to re-envision what housing could look like, knowing that the solution is supportive housing or just some other type of housing for folks. It's not a congregate setting. And so for those that are, those older adults that are unhoused, what is the vision for what that setting could look like, at the state level, at the city level? I know that's a tough question, but I don't think we have a specific answer, but I'm just kind of challenged by that and how we're going to envision that moving forward, as well as for those who are currently in the hotel rooms, how do we prevent them, like this clarion call to action? How do we prevent them from going back into a setting that we know is just not an appropriate setting? That it wasn't before, and it isn't in the future. And so how do we make those adjustments? Because we're, as Kim was saying, this is a marathon, yet how are we pivoting to ensure that we're preventing folks from getting back into a congregate setting? And I'll say one of the things that, we've discovered again in our new partnerships is being approached by foundations, and foundations who are saying, we have this X amount of money, how do you want to use it? And, on a call yesterday, our staff, we do have a director of healthy aging, a position that ECS was committed to about 2 years ago. I brought that position on, a gerontologist, as we were looking at people aging in place. And our board committed to that position. And on the call, it was a very creative conversation around how do we use existing problem-solving money that we have in the community and kind of patch that together with foundation dollars and start doing the assessments in the hotels to figure out, even if it's a patch, how do we prevent people from going back into congregate settings? So that was just a thought we had, but that's the kind of the big question. And I don't expect you to have all the answers, because I I think we're part of that solution and that thought partnership, but it's just the big question that I have. Thank you.
Shireen, I'd say you start with that. I'd love to hear how you're thinking about that, and then I can come add a few words.
Well, as Beth mentioned, and Beth and Episcopal Community Services have really been leaders in the space of older adults and homelessness. And I think I would say that they are the leader in San Francisco in thinking through some of these issues. And it was really great when Beth brought on the gerontologist to really think about older adults in the shelter system and older adults who are homeless and what we should be doing and really how we should be handling those issues. And I think she did have a great model for what we could be doing, or at least the beginning of that, what we could be doing, and really clear. And things may be different given where we are right now in terms of the support for some of these ideas. But I feel like we really need to be in very close partnership with the state, Kim, because we need the state support to do the things that we really need to do locally. I think it's been very hard, at least in the past, to get the right people in the room at the right time, all in agreement on what we should do. Resources are scarce, and so there's reasons that that the system doesn't really want to peel off and think about the needs of older adults separately from the overall population. And so, but it's going to be really important, and it's going to be really important because for many reasons. But you know, if we're going to be in a position where we're going to have to like stand this kind of system up again, and then bring it down, and stand it up and bring it down, we have to be able to have a way for people to exit into something that's safe, and hopefully just keep them there, instead of having this plan for transition all the time. And I think there will be more momentum and more energy around that, given the reality of what we're going to be dealing with for the next however long. But I really do think if the state said, here's some models and we are going to support those, then it would be much easier for us locally to build energy and action around those things.
This is extremely helpful input and feedback, and it makes me, the governor announced last week that we were creating this roadmap back to, or again, it's not back, roadmap to modify the stay-at-home order that has 6 indicators. And the second indicator is all about our population, both at home and in residential, including residential, shelters, hotels, correctional facilities, like the whole state hospitals, get the gamut. And that work has just begun this week internally, led by our Kim Johnson, the Director of Social Services, who runs a lot of the homeless programs as well as social service programs, IHSS, APS, many of our favorite acronyms, CalFresh. So Kim has really been convening us internally around that, and I am confident there will be an external stakeholder piece of that, of indicator 2, how are we supporting those who are at home to stay at home, which of course involves having a home, having support. And your point about the up-down is really spot on, Shireen. People have moved mountains already, and how are we going to stay as nimble as the public health would have us with people's lives and the workforce and the infrastructure and the funding? And we haven't said it here, but funding is, we're all very concerned about the impact of the recession on the people we serve, our workforce, and our institutions. So that's out there. So I think more to come on that. And the only other thing I would be remiss if I didn't mention, of course, is Dr. Cashel from UCSF has been at the center, and I mean that both physically, when we were all still gathering at the operations center, driving the state's homeless strategy. Her name is on the documents, and so I know she will be a partner intimately on this work. But we do need to, as we are moving as a state to this roadmap, figure out how we both bring in folks from the local and partner, but then also play that role of modeling and supporting, funding, all the things we need to do in a meaningful partnership. So that moment is now. Thank you. And this has been a rich conversation. I want to say a very special thank you to Kim McCabe Wade,
Kim McCoy-Wade and Shireen McSpadden, our feature presenters, as well as to Tom Briotti, Nancy Masters, and Beth Stokes, who are our panelists. Kim, you mentioned early on wanting to videotape seniors who are heroes. I'm going to take this point of personal privilege and just acknowledge somebody who is on the call listening, and that is our founder, 98-year-old Rita Semmel, who is with us. And I would like to say this, one of the most rewarding parts of every day is checking in with her. I think that, I get more out of those calls than she does probably. But yesterday, she and I were interviewed on television in New York by a fellow by the name of Kelly Wright. And he closed by just asking her for a piece of wisdom. And I think that is an acknowledgement of what our aging adults have to give us in this time of quarantine. And I would very much, to those on the line and to those who will listen to the recording later, would just commend you all to reach out. Rita has figured out how to do FaceTime, so we've had a lot of fun on these calls. But I think that simple things like that are so much more fulfilling to those of us than perhaps even to those that we are calling. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that. I also want to say a very special thank you to Cynthia Zambucas, who has been incredible in helping us put this together, as well as our tech team at the Department of Emergency Management, the coordinator of the community branch, John McKnight, and his team, Darren Lowe, Russell Trey Allen, and today joining us, Kelly Garrity and Karen Nemsek. Next week, we will be featuring the impact of the coronavirus on the environment. And we will have with us the director of the Department of Environment, Debbie Raphael, and some wonderful panelists. So we hope that everybody joins us then. Thank you all. And again, to Kim McCoy-Wade and to Shireen McSpadden, thank you for taking this precious time and sharing what you know best with us. We'll stay in touch. God bless you all.
Thank you, Michael.
This concludes our program for the day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.